你知道吗？刻在这墙上的名字，这一些人和我们一样，有自己的家人和自己所爱的人。
Hi, General Roberts-Smith.
Hey, Len.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well.
Good.
So thank you for taking your time out for this interview. So let's start with a broad question. What is the significance of ANZAC to the nation and the fellow Australians?
Well, the first significance of it, hey, Len, is, as you point out, that it is a significant historical event. We need to remember that Australia was a very young country in 1915. Of course, our Indigenous Australians had been here for over 40,000 years, but Australia was only colonised in 1788 and did not actually become a nation until 1901. So by 1915 it was still a very early stage in Australian national history. The landing at Gallipoli, the ANZACs at Gallipoli were involved in the first major military action really that Australians had been involved in as a nation. So that's the first significance of it. It's a significant historical event. Since that time, of course, it's developed into a lot more than that. First of all, ANZAC Day itself started to be commemorated in the early 1920s, and it was originally commemorated to remember or to commemorate those servicemen and women who died or who were wounded at Gallipoli.
Can you hear Australia's heroes marching? They're marching once again across our great land.
Later on it evolved into more than that. It became to be seen more as a national cultural event in that there was an appreciation and acknowledgement of the sacrifice that those people had made, but also an understanding and acknowledgement of the particular qualities which they had demonstrated there, which came to define in Australia's perception what it really means to be Australian.
As we know that the ANZAC spirit come from the people who were born and raised in Australia. So, and therefore they share the common bond of what you have just mentioned, mateship. But now that we are a multicultural society with a great influx of migrants who may or may not have the opportunity to share the mateship in the same way. So what does ANZAC spirit mean to these people?
I think what we need to remember, as I said a moment ago, is that in fact the reality is that in 1915 virtually all Australians were migrants, other than the Indigenous people who'd been here, as I said, for over 40,000 years. Everybody else came from a migrant background.
True.
And that's been the case obviously since then, and it's become much more multicultural, as you point out. But I think, I think the ANZAC Day is in fact an opportunity for all of Australians, whatever cultural background they come from, to actually share that quality of mateship in ANZAC Day itself. I think that's one of the significant features of it.
So why do you think the ANZAC spirit should live on? Because it's already happened 100 years ago. I mean, how does that exactly impact on us on a day-to-day basis?
I think Australian mateship comes to the fore in times of adversity. That was why it was demonstrated at Gallipoli. Gallipoli was not a military victory or success so far as Australia or the ANZACs were concerned. It was actually a failure. But what it did do in that failure and in the hardships that the troops suffered over the 8 months that they were there was demonstrated these qualities of triumph over adversity and looking after your mates, looking after each other, being able to demonstrate resilience and personal initiative and all of these other qualities in circumstances of great hardship. And the other examples you've mentioned, which have nothing to do with fighting or military or combat, draw out those same Australian qualities. The siege at the Lint Cafe, there was obviously an element of fighting or conflict there, but things like bushfires and floods in Queensland and all of the rest of it, we see very quickly Australians responding to help and support each other on the basis that, well, we're all mates, we've all got to get in together and help each other to survive these circumstances of hardship.
ANZAC 最初的理由是为了要纪念那一些为国牺牲的将士们，但是随着时间的流逝，这个意义已经改变了，是为了要形容澳人无论是从哪一个国度或者是文化背景该拥有的一些价值观，而这些价值观包括了勇气、自我尊重、相互扶持和爱护他人。当然，这些价值观综合起来，就变成了澳洲最独特的 mateship， 也就是哥儿们。
I think ANZAC Day is an opportunity now, as it has evolved over the years, from, as I said, initially just the commemoration of the veterans and their families in particular conflicts. It's become much wider than that now. Certainly that's an important part of it, to commemorate and recognise the sacrifice that Australian servicemen and women have made in all conflicts in which Australia has been involved over the years. But the other aspect of it, the very important aspect, is, as I said, this recognition of our national identity, which was formed in that cauldron, if you like, of battle and conflict, but is also apparent in the way Australians respond to each other in situations of adversity. I think those qualities of courage, self-reliance, self-initiative, personal initiative, mateship, sacrifice, all of those things are really important, and they are applied in Australia as we see these days, irrespective of what cultural background or what ethnic background Australians come from.
Can you hear Australia's heroes marching? Can you hear them as they march into eternity? There will never be a greater love. There just couldn't be.